Story 1. It has helped a lot. I still get the main points and stay informed, but I do it by reading the news in the mornings. I do not stay connected all day and night. Story 2. From 2019 to 2021, I worked as a digital director for a progressive organization while living in Texas. My brain consumed political social media and news almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It made me worse, more depressed, and angrier. After I left that job, I quit every social platform except Reddit, which I carefully curate to remove political subreddits. Life is completely better. I am calmer, saner, more loving, and more present. I still do a lot of community and political work, but I focus on what I can change. Story 3. The less time I spend on Reddit, the happier I am. People do not really understand, or seem not to, that their local politics, city council, mayor, school board, and so on have way more impact on their daily lives than what happens in Washington, District of Columbia. However, most people completely ignore local politics, which local politicians appreciate. Story 4. The actual news is few and far between. Mostly, you are keeping informed on quotes, vibes, and possibilities. It is useless stress and wasted time. I am just as informed as I was, but much less stressed. Story 5. Did this about 10 years ago. Life is so much better when you do not have all that background noise going on. Story 6. It's wonderful. Anyone in my Facebook feed that posts politics, I hide them. I removed all political subscriptions from Reddit, and 90% of the time I've gotten good at just scrolling past the rage bait. People may try to convince me that politics are important, but they really are not. Shut off the noise, go outside, and live your life. None of that matters, and both sides are absolutely broken. It's best to step back and focus on the things that really matter. You will be much happier and less stressed. Story 7. It is a huge weight lifted off me mentally. I stay informed through local sources, but I no longer allow myself to be manipulated by propaganda. That is all it is these days. Stories meant to keep you enraged. I was tired of being played, so I turned it off, and I am much more at peace. Story 8. I have realized that while some new information, real or fake, gets through, I do not care enough anymore. Sadly, I hate this, but ignorance is bliss. I love having nothing to comment on regarding local news and politics. I do follow my own interests a lot, of course. However, I do not have any news feed, and I work overnight shifts, so I do not get updates on what happens during the week, to be honest. I barely found out that Ozzy and Hulk died yesterday. Story 9. I have never been one to watch or pay attention to the news, so I cannot speak to any effects of changing the behavior because it has not changed. However, cultural osmosis tends to keep one informed on most major events. For example, it is impossible to be a normal member of society and not be aware of major conflicts, scandals, or political discussions. Then you simply look into anything that piques your interest. In the same way, I am not really a fan of music, but it is impossible not to be aware of the existence of Taylor Swift. Story 10. I have not stopped following the news and politics, but I have become very good at identifying and avoiding rage bait. It is important to be informed. Part of the reason we are in this current situation is gross ignorance on a societal level. However, I do my best not to let it affect my life on a personal level. Story 11. Rather well. Big, important, or close enough news will still reach me through people around me. Otherwise, it is a significant improvement not to be constantly bombarded with depressing news about things I cannot change or control. News is not about events that happened on this day alone. It is a collection of the worst possible events that occurred around the world on this day. Story 12. It is the best decision I have made. My mood has improved significantly, and I am not worrying about things that I have no control over. Story 13. This is interesting to see, as politics have never ruined my mood or made me mentally distressed, even when the worst events appear on the news. When I look at the news and politics, I view it for what it is: information about our country, the world, or other people. I want to stay informed. Of course, when disasters happen, I feel very empathetic and disheartened, but to change what is going on, we have to stay informed. I have been interested in politics since the age of 8. I was also involved in speech and debate in school, so I had to know what was going on. I respect and admire people who choose not to watch or listen to anything that stresses them out. Story 14. I keep up with important news, but tabloid political news is pointless to listen to. It never affected my mental health to begin with. It helps that I am Canadian. Story 15. A little bit of apathy goes a long way. We cannot possibly care about everything, and it is a barrage of worldwide news all day, every day. Without some degree of switching off, you just end up a completely confused mess. Story 16. I stopped watching the news 20 years ago. It is great. Honestly, the news just made me sad. Even without following the news, I still hear on the radio or see headlines about a new murder or shooting in my city. However, statistics show that the murder rate is at an all-time low and that it is one of the safest cities in North America. Instead, when I see things pop up on my feed, the radio or television, I research them. I no longer seek out the news unless there is something important happening. Story 17. Maintaining one's mental health is essential, but one must remember, there is no such thing as being non-political. Just by making a decision to stay out of politics, you are making the decision to allow others to shape politics and exert power over you. If you are alienated from the current political system, then just by staying out of it, you do nothing to change it, you simply entrench it. Joan Kerner. Story 18. I have deleted most news from my life. Previously, I watched mainstream news from each side, but it was too heavy and biased, all with an agenda. I also unfollowed as many subscriptions as I could to get away from politics. Now, I may skim headlines, but that is about it. It is much better mentally. I do not need or want that heaviness around me. There will always be scandals, crime, devastation, and more. Story 19. I realize that being informed has absolutely no positive impact on my life. The only negative impact of not being informed is the social ostracism faced from those who see it as utter heresy to not participate in the culture of news. Story 20. It's the way life should be. Everyone will die having wasted a life filled with news without gaining anything. I spend much more time with friends and family and doing hobbies instead of being glued to the news. Story 21. Exponentially improved. Other than occasionally wasting time at work arguing with people on Reddit, I unsubscribed from all of the overtly political subreddits, stopped listening to political podcasts, and deleted my Twitter account. I still have a Facebook account and follow a small local group to keep up on things going on around my city, but I did unfriend or mute anyone on my feed who posts political content. Story 22. I do not regret the decision. I seldom engage in political discussions except to answer questions specifically directed to me. Occasionally, someone attempts to debate my answer to such a question, which usually ends with me making it clear that I am not interested in changing their mind. This detachment has been a great experience, and I feel that it has had a more positive impact on the people I would previously have argued with than if I had argued as I did in the past. It is liberating in a way that is hard to describe. Story 23. I stopped watching the news completely after the election. Things are better for my mental health as long as I do not think about the state of the world. The only glimpse of politics I find these days is when it randomly appears on my social media. Story 24. My stress is greatly reduced. If something is important or major news, someone will eventually bring it to you. You can then ask questions and have a meaningful conversation to learn more. One thing I realized is that I was not informing myself in a practical way. I never acted on the information or conducted follow-up research. Mostly, I would get agitated by a story but take no action or do deep research to understand the complexity of the issue. It was like watching short videos that made me angry and gave a slight sense of being informed, but it was mostly surface-level content. I would be better off reading a book that dives deeply into a specific topic if I thought it was important. Story 25. It has been a revelation. You also need to redefine what informed means. I still know what is happening. I am just not engaging in the drama of the back and forth. Story 26. Well, my friends and wife still talk about it, so I haven't gone cold turkey. However, not reading about the nonsense that has been happening definitely helps with my attitude. I know about the person in charge and what he and that political party want to do and are doing, so there's really no need to read about it without getting upset. Story 27. It has not improved my mental health at all. I am still keenly aware of all the damage that this administration has already done and how many consecutive left-leaning governments it will take to undo just the most serious changes. I absolutely hate choosing to be ignorant. It goes against nearly every one of my principles, but I will say that, as an American, the whole situation is extremely difficult, so it is a sacrifice I am willing to make until I can leave. Story 28. Much happier. I have removed people who just post political content and stay as informed as I need to. Most of the political news is just entertainment intended to stress people out for views. Once you weed out that noise, you can be happier and still stay informed. Story 29. I feel completely disconnected from the average small talk in the office. Sometimes I feel ignorant and think I should at least learn something, but then I don't do anything. I have lived in Argentina my whole life, and it was intense, really intense. Since I moved to Spain 4 years ago, I stopped caring and it feels like I am on vacation. Story 30. I've curated my social media experience with mute filters and other tools for years, resulting in a better experience than most people, I think. I deliberately made the news something I have to actively check rather than have it constantly fed to me, and I only check the news 1 to 2 times a week. I don't feel less informed because, in the grand scheme, things don't happen fast enough for me to need to keep my finger on the pulse. My day-to-day life is generally focused on work, my children, preparing dinner, and progressing in whatever games I'm playing in the evenings. I'm not ignorant of what's going on, and I have some strong opinions about the state of the world, but it's a smaller part of my mental space. Story 31. About 10 years ago, I cut out every social media platform except Reddit and LinkedIn. Even on Reddit, I removed most news subreddits from my feed. I am confident that choice saved my life. I do not think I would have survived all the noise. I still engage with the news periodically to stay broadly aware of the details of the massive crisis our planet has become, but otherwise I focus on my children, my wife, cooking, my work, and my health, roughly in that order. Story 32. It's all propaganda anyway. I feel like I lost nothing of value. My mental health is better, and if I am just going to be misinformed, I would rather not participate. I don't need to be told which politician or oligarch to hate. They all deserve society's rage. Story 33. How has it affected your mental and physical health? It has been fantastic. An ability to stay informed? I am horribly uninformed about issues that might enrage me but will never actually impact my life in any noticeable way. It is amazing how absolutely nothing changes except your happiness when you stop consuming fear-based, anger-based, and upset-based news. People who feel powerless in their lives desperately want to believe that complaining on the internet gives them some sort of power to change the world because they are upset at the world and upset that nothing they do will change it. Do not fall into that trap. People have been enraged and screaming since the world started. They tend to end up unhappier than people who accept that most of life is out of their control and getting upset changes nothing except yourself. Story 34. I used to let politics stress me out. I still watch some news and keep up with things because we have to stay informed. I just changed my perception. My biggest concern is my household and what actually affects it. Next is my community, city, or town. Then the country as a whole, as far as trade and federal regulations go, but only things that will actually affect me and my family. The rest is just noise. I mainly focus on bills that could become law. I do my own research and determine what is best for me and my family first, then my city, and then the country. I don't care what the left, right, or any news outlet has to say about it because they have no stake in my life. This, I find, is the best way to stay informed while staying out of the mess. Story 35. It is much more peaceful. I get the biggest news anyway through memes or people telling me. That said, I still hear something and go back to old patterns of worrying about this thing or that, but mostly it is just better when I forget about it. Story 36. It's definitely great. I sometimes get news through memes. It is how I learned about the current wars. But genuinely, most content in the news and media is just useless brain rot. Story 37. I feel the need to stay informed because my friends often accept propaganda at face value and repeat false information. I correct them when I think it is important. Story 38. A focus on gratitude and exercise combined with limited exposure to news has improved my life dramatically. Virtually all media is skewed one way or the other, making it a waste of time. Very little journalism still exists, so there is little loss. I focus on fact-based sources where I can find them, avoid Google for any socially progressive related questions, and switch to DuckDuckGo for more accurate information. The difference is dramatic. Story 39. I unfollowed my news podcast of choice at the beginning of this year because I had a lot of stress due to renovations and the entire situation with the former president. Two wars were not helping, especially since I did not know what I was supposed to do with that information. Not gonna lie, it took some weight off me. Not drastically, but a bit. Story 40. Absolutely wonderful. I have picked one news source, the New York Times, and I spend less than 15 minutes a day making sure I am up to date on current events. Story 41. I got rid of Facebook and Instagram. I know things are messed up and getting worse, but I can't do anything productive if I am depressed about it. Story 42. I have never followed politics closely. My interests lie elsewhere. From what I can see, regardless of your political affiliation, most of the news only serves to upset people. I am a happy person and do not need that. Story 43. I feel better, but there is always the cloud hanging over my head that our country's foundations are at risk and that every day he is in office he is doing harmful things. Also, I still feel responsible for tracking the most egregious challenges to democracy, due process, and the rule of law. Turning away completely would be irresponsible. Story 44. If you watch the news, you are misinformed. If you do not watch the news, you are uninformed. I choose the latter. Story 45. It's very relaxing. These days, I only really stay up to date through memes in jokey WhatsApp groups. And that's exactly as up to date as I need to be on most issues. There's really no virtue to staying informed unless it's an election year. Even then, you are best off going to trusted sources rather than following whatever the first headlines are to hit your algorithms. Story 46. It's been amazing. I got rid of Facebook years ago. Late last year, I unsubscribed from any subreddit that posted politics. I don't watch or listen to the news. On YouTube, I hide channels from my feed that post about news or divisive topics. I feel so much more at ease, more rested, and more capable of tackling the day. I occasionally read news maybe every couple of days or about once a week, just to stay well enough informed about the state of the world. It is all still difficult, by the way, in case you were wondering. Story 47. Finding a news source is tough. Most have a bias and many are just propaganda. I do some research on politics, but I certainly do not let it bring me down. Story 48. It has been wonderful for my mental health, and my physical health strongly follows my mental health. I avoid political arguments on social media. If every post is political or a dating profile reads like doom and gloom, I block the person. I don't care which side they are on. I have always been an issue-by-issue person, so I don't have a side. I feel much more mentally at peace, and I'm not giving that up for someone's cause of the day. Story 49. My parents had the news on all the time and I do not normally watch it. I pick up on things from social media but have no interest. You might as well watch reality television or the news. It does not even matter. Story 50. Makes me a lot happier. I get more time to do what I love. 99.9% of the time, you do not need news to survive. You do not need to stay up to date. If new rules come into place, they will email you about them, or you will notice in due time to do something about it. If there is an earthquake, it does not matter if it is not where you are, and if it is where you are either prepared for it or not. Life goes on. Keep building. Keep living. Carefree. Story 51. It's great. I stopped watching the news about 20 years ago. I gave up Facebook 11 years ago. I don't think about the fact that people are in turmoil now over everything. I was tired of everything you see or read being exaggerated and biased. Now I live peacefully with my wife and let everyone else worry about things we cannot change. Story 52. Being informed does not improve my ability to solve the major problems in the world. It is better to be happy and powerless than miserable and powerless. Story 53. For me, it worked for a bit. However, I have a need to know what is happening in the world. I do not binge on it. I only watch a few minutes to get the gist of the events. The same applies to reading articles. Story 54. Been great. I do not care about being informed. Rather, I focus on my working out, bike riding, and just enjoying my time at this point. Story 55. It has been my experience that there is no avoiding the news. Permeates all of modern life. The best you can do these days is to not tune into it. Eventually, you start to see the matrix, so to speak. Meaning, you see that the majority of what passes for news is just clickbait. If something truly problematic happens, you will know about it. Tuning out of news opens up bandwidth for curiosity that leads to learning and a deeper understanding of your life and the world around you. Story 56. I check the news and politics for 30 minutes a couple of times a week. I get what I need to stay informed, but I'm not there long enough to get pulled into the void. It's nice, like being able to see through cloudy water. People seem to think if they're not constantly in tune, they'll be less informed or miss something crucial. In most cases, it's trivial with some real news sprinkled in. I'm not any less informed than I was before, but I'm sure less stressed and spending more time doing things I enjoy. Story 57. If it is really that important, you will find out. Otherwise, free your mind and remove it from your routine. It is amazing all the little good things in life you notice when you are not constantly upset at the latest headline. Story 58. I stopped paying attention to news media and political content years ago. It is all designed to frustrate you. Story 59. I often read newspapers instead of digital news, video, or audio news. It helps. Yes, I am only a day late to the events, but most of them are not urgent enough for me to drop everything today and rush to read the news and act on it. It has been wonderful to switch back to paper or even a digital paper, such as a copy of the newspaper in PDF form. It helps. I cannot say I want to be ignorant about what is happening around me, but constant digital news is not for me. Story 60. 90% of the news is false information, and the other 10% is questionable. There is no real loss there. If there is an important topic, I do my own research on it, where I can at least cross-reference sources and find out who they are quoting. Story 61. I reduced my news watching for my mental health. People who say politics is too much or do not want to deal with it completely have their head in the sand. I realized that if you have no clue or never want to know, then you are pretty selfish. Story 62. I'm in the process of doing this for American politics. I'm not from the United States, and reading about your clowns gets old real fast. Is there a list of subreddits I can mute? Subreddits which commonly host political content even though their topics are completely different? Story 63. Honestly, when I used to watch or read the news, I kept it minimal anyway. I always found news to be extremely negative and biased. At worst, when I looked at news, I would feel pulled by things that were not related to me, and it might inflate my ego, especially if I debated online about social issues related to news events. When I decided to give it up completely, I did not notice any significant changes in my mental or physical health. But yes, it has improved. I would say, do not just give it up, but combine it with meditation. There are many ways your ego can grow, not just from the news. So you might give it up, but still get involved in some other trivial worldly thing and argue a lot about it. Let it all go. Even with meditation, do not get too attached to the idea of being a spiritual person. Just meditate to be still and find some peace inside. As for staying informed, it is easy. If something is important, I will hear about it. People cannot seem to keep quiet about anything important, so I do not need to read or watch the news. Family, friends, or coworkers will say, "Did you hear about?" And I can say, "No, what happened?" if I think it is important enough to ask. Local news is the only thing I might be more alert about, or anything related to a world war or pandemic that may affect the area I am in, but 99% of the time it does not concern me. Yes, there is a lot of suffering in the world, but I have no power to significantly help others in other countries, so there is no point in me being informed about it all either. That is just an ego trap. Story 64. Informed of what? People get obsessed with many things that have zero impact on their lives and ignore a whole bunch of important issues. No one truly understands how broken our financial system really is. It is mostly theater for people with nothing going on in their lives to feel like they have a purpose, are part of something, and actually being productive. Complaining online or protesting is not productive. I say this as someone who used to follow it all very closely, staying up all night reading legislation, researching policy impacts, and ultimately recognizing what George Carlin told us was not a comedy bit. It was the most accurate analysis of our political, media, and corporate structure ever expressed. None of them, 99.9999%, care about you. It is one big club and you are not in it. After mostly disconnecting, everything in my life got better. I still find things and have opinions, but largely keep them to myself because it does not matter, we are all in trouble. Story 65. A lot better in every way. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I did not consume any news for 4 months, and it was wonderful. My wife would tell me about anything somewhat interesting, which was not much. Now I just switch off. I still listen to things, but they just wash over me. I focus on my own life and do not worry too much about things I cannot change. Story 66. My life is significantly better after avoiding politics and the news. Watching mainstream media does not help you stay informed. It presents a filtered narrative designed to influence your voting. Story 67. I checked out after the election. How has it affected my mental and physical health? Well, I finally have the brain space to get to the gym, and my mental health is a lot better. I figure if there is anything I actually need to know, somebody will tell me about it. You do not need to be informed. Most of it is just programming anyway. Story 68. A lot. I lived in the United States, Japan, and traveled Europe extensively. The news makes it sound like my chance of getting spat on or being attacked is 1 in 5. I have never felt hate as an Asian while abroad. Only kindness. I have friends who are scared or anxious to travel based on consuming too much news. Ignorance is bliss. Story 69. When you realize that the news is just propaganda for whatever flavor of politics you consume, turning it off becomes easy. Their entire goal is to make you feel fear, anger, and hate. Nobody would watch the news if it started by saying everything is pretty good. Have a nice day. Instead of highlighting the good in the world, they tell you how everything is going bad and will make your life immensely worse. That triggers your inner fight or flight response and forces your brain to pay more attention to gather information on how to react to this terrible thing that is happening. When people are constantly barraged with bad news, their anxiety spikes. When your anxiety is spiking constantly like this, it causes depression and mental health issues. It is not surprising that while the quality of life across the globe has never been higher, mental health has plummeted. There is no better time to be alive than right now throughout the course of human history, yet people are miserable. You used to just watch the nightly news for an hour in the evening, then go about your day. Now, people are plugged into the 24/7 news cycle and constantly fed doom and gloom. I stopped watching cable news about 10 years ago when I realized all they were doing was bringing people on to yell at each other. It is not healthy to consume media like this and is a huge reason there is such a sense of divide in the United States. Turn it off. Talk to your neighbors. Go for a walk in your community and see that it is not so bad. You will be happier. Story 70. How many blatant lies does the media need to be caught in for you to ignore their obvious propaganda? I go directly to source documents on new laws and treaties. The tariff and trade deals are the most important things for my business that I have to follow. Story 71. I used to be one of those who read and watched everything, but I dialed it back in 2016. Now I am aware enough, but I do not doom scroll anymore. I have muted all my friends on both sides of the aisle who make political posts to antagonize everyone on their timeline. Story 72. It's been really beneficial for my mental health. I'm less informed, clearly, but very little of that information directly impacts me, and even less of it is something I could do anything about anyway. I started dropping online communities that regularly had political rage bait, unsubscribed from all political video channels, and then clicked "Do not recommend this channel" when the algorithm continued to feed them to me. Whenever someone started bringing up politics, I either excused myself or told them I was not interested in talking about politics, depending on the situation. It got me out of a very tribal us versus them polarized mindset that I had been in. I highly recommend it for anyone. Story 73. It's much better to be honest. I used to get dragged into the whole social media, arguing politics on Twitter and such. These days, I am engaged enough to have an idea of what is going on, but I am not getting involved, and I am not going to discuss it with people. I get a chance to vote about every 2 years, during local and general elections. That is the only impact I can have, so that is how much of my time and mental energy it gets now. Story 74. 10,000% improves it with absolutely zero downsides. I have realized that the myth of staying informed is bait to keep you plugged in all the time. My time, attention, and energy are all vital to me. They are mine and no one else's. I will dole them out as I please. They are the only things I truly own and can control. There is nothing so critical that I must stay tuned in 24/7, other than maybe weather alerts or major local events that directly impact me. I know the foundation of my belief system. I don't need to hear talking heads argue all day. I know the players at this point and what everyone stands for. I believe it is all theater anyway. That's not to say I won't check in on national policies that interest me. But when I say interest, I mean something I can react to, plan for, and have agency over. If not, then there is nothing I can do beyond sending thoughts and prayers or allowing myself to be fearful. Even economic news is damaging when followed too routinely. If I make financial decisions based on every troll article posted every hour of every day, then I might as well give all my money to charity because that is nonsensical. When I want to learn about the world around me, I study the sciences, humanities, and even spiritual texts to strengthen my already pretty open worldview. I have noticed that in real life and online are two completely different universes. Online, the world is chaotic, divisive, tragic, and full of venom. In real life, my world is loving and cooperative. Aside from bumping into a random person having a bad day, I experience kind, loving, humorous, empathetic people all the time. These are the people really making the world turn. Even those I disagree with on petty issues like partisan politics or religious beliefs are still kind, loving, and adding value to the society I enjoy. They are not monsters. Nowadays, I am just trying to keep my online presence to a minimum. I am still very active on Reddit, but instead of trying to follow and argue about politics or news cycles, I tend to stay in niche communities that pique my interests or are very positive. It is almost to the point where I am considering unplugging all the time. If modern life allowed me to do that and not be a social pariah, I would throw my phone, TV, and router in the nearest river. Story 75. For me, almost all news is exaggerated nonsense, so I stay away. It is not good for my post-traumatic stress disorder or my mental health. Remember when everyone thought World War III was coming? That really frightened me. I would rather be uninformed or have my own beliefs than to spread fear-mongering and disinformation. It is all a psychological operation. Story 76. I stopped after the last election. I no longer engage in doom scrolling and avoid political news as much as possible. Story 77. No matter how much I block, filter, and ignore, enough leaks through that I am well informed. I mean, even with a poncho and umbrella, if you are in a massive storm, you still get wet. Plus, having had an interest in history, the twists and turns in the news cycle are not too surprising. Occasionally, something that is not the same old talking points will show up and I will do a deep dive. Story 78. It's great. Turns out that basically no news impacts my actual life. I vote once every 2 years. Flip a coin, pick a party, and you are in and out like 5. Name the last news story you read that actually impacted your life, like your day changed because of it. September 11th, 2001, probably. Story 79. Most of it is some form of propaganda. People with significant wealth are trying to influence the masses to think and act the way they want them to. Story 80. It has been really nice. Every day the news screams it is the end of the day. Now that I am not watching the news, it has reduced my stress, that is for sure. Surprisingly, I have been going from left-leaning to leaning more right now. Story 81. It's nice. The majority of news I receive comes from Reddit posts, but I can easily scroll past and ignore them. I am tired of people making politics their entire personality. Cutting those people out of my life, both in person and online, is preferable for me. Story 82. My income has increased significantly since I stopped following news and politics. I am not saying I am rich, but I am no longer at the bottom of the ladder. I employ people instead of being an employee. This does not mean I am uninformed. I see plenty of information on social media feeds, and I can read the news if I hear something I am curious about. I simply do not watch news on television or listen to it on the radio, nor do I make reading the news a habit or engage in political debates. Story 83. Ignorance is bliss. It is pretty self-explanatory. I do not follow politics because I find that it consumes people. It is quite obvious that most of those in the political world do not actually care about positive change, so why should I give it my attention? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.